Alright, I'm going to show you how to turn this square into a brick. So we have our square here, and if we hit Shift F, we can see our polygons. Everything in ZBrush is made up of polygons, and when you learn how to control where and how many polygons you have, you become a much better sculptor. So if you hit Shift F to turn that off, and I'm going to go down to Geometry, and I'm going to hit Dynamesh. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like before and after I hit. So Shift F, there's our polygons. We hit, and you look down here, we have 512. That's not enough for the detail that I want when I sculpt this brick. So I hit Dynamesh, and you see it looks like one, but if I zoom in, you can see it's a whole bunch of little ones. And then you look down here, we have 98,370 polygons. So Shift F, now we go back to our square. For sculpting, we go to Move. We're going to make this look more like a brick. And we can change the shape by moving these sliders. So I'm going to flatten it out a little bit. A little bit longer. Now it looks more like a brick. And if I hit Shift F again, you'll see that there's still a whole bunch of polygons. They're just moved around a little bit. Shift F. So now we're going to sculpt to give this some detail and make it more look more like a worn out brick. So we go to Draw, and then we're going to pick a brush. You can go to Brush here, because yours isn't going to look like mine. And you can pick your brush, or you can hit B and all your brushes will come up and you can pick the one you want. But I already have mine docked down here, so I'm going to pick Trim Dynamic, and I'm going to just start wearing down the edges. Of our brick, our old brick. I'm going to try to hit all these corners, or all these edges, to make them look a little bit worn. You can change the size of your brush up here to get different effects. I'm just trying to get the edges here. Alright, so I think I got them all. There's our brick. Now already it looks more like a worn out brick, but we can take it a step further. So we're going to go up to Lightbox, and then under Alpha, you'll see I have this Stone Cracks Alpha. Now you can create these yourself. That's a little bit more advanced topic, or you can just go to things like Flip Normals and just buy a pack for $6 to $12, and then you can load them into ZBrush and use them on your models. So we'll just pick one of these. I like this one. That looks like a tough one. Well, but I want to switch brushes because I want to go to, I always use standard when I use an alpha. Standard brush, because I don't use it very often. So if I have an alpha sitting on something, I want to be sitting on standard. I go to drag, because I want to drag this alpha out onto the model, and I'm going to pick this one. Alright, so I just double clicked it. I hit Lightbox. Now I have this selected, so when I drag on this geometry, it's going to create cracks. But first you'll see it's going to make them stick out. That's because I have it on Z add. I don't want my cracks to stick out, I want them to go in. So I'll hit Control Z, and that disappears. Then I'll go to Sub. This way when I drag out my crack, it takes it away. And you'll see over here it kind of tears it up on the bottom. That's because you have to protect the back side of your model by hitting Back Face Mask right here. I have it on mine, but you can go to Brush. I think it's Modifiers. No, Auto Masking. It's under Auto Masking. Where's it at? Auto Masking. And then you hit Back Face Mask. And so I've customized my UI so it's right down here because I use it a lot. So I'll hit Control Z to go back one where I didn't have that on, and now if I draw it out, you'll see that it doesn't tear up the back. It protects it because back face matte. It only works on this face. So then I can go to another face and I can draw it out, draw it out. But I don't have to keep using the same one. I can always go back to Lightbox and I can pick a different alpha to give it a different look. So I'll pick this one. Then close Lightbox. Now I'm going to hit Control Z a couple times to take some of these off. Control Z, Control Z, Control Z, Control Z. So now I took them all off. So now I can just drag out a new one. And then say I want to go to this side and have a different one. I'm going to go to Lightbox. I'm going to switch to this one. Close Lightbox. Drag it out. Give it a little bit of different look. Go to Lightbox, get a different one. Let's get a rough one. Let's get this one. Okay. Close Lightbox. I'm going to do the end of this one. There we go. I'm going to do the same one over here. And on this end. Alright, so now we got us a brick. A little bit right here. An old, worn out brick. I didn't do anything on the bottom because you're not going to see the bottom. Alright, so we have our brick. And if we want to turn this brick into a wall, we just duplicate it. So I have duplicate down here, but you can also find it under Subtool, Duplicate. I've just moved it here because I use it a lot. So if I hit Duplicate, you'll see I have another one pop up right here. And then I can select that one and move it. I'll just slide it over. This one to touch. And then if I want to go up, I can hit Duplicate again. Slide it over. And if I don't want all my bricks to look the same, I can make multiples of these. So let's go back to the original brick we had, and I'm going to hit Control Z to go back before we started putting all those alphas on it. So I just hit Control Z a bunch of time and it takes steps off incrementally. I can go back to Lightbox and find a different alpha to give it a different look. Close Lightbox, and then I can just drag it onto there. Drag it onto here. So this is a really beat up wall. Grab a new one. Grab this one. That's a cool one. You want to go to the other side if you're going to see both sides of it. Drag some out. So these look the same. I'll probably change those. So Alt-click will change to the one I want. Or you can go over here and click on it, the one you want. I accidentally turned that one off by hitting the eyeball. So I want this one on bottom, so I'll hit Alt-click, and then I'm going to go to my Lightbox. I'm going to change my alpha to this one. And I'm going to give it a little bit of different look by adding some more cracks to it. So it won't look just the same. Now they all look different-ish. And I'm going to just like Alt-click on this one to give this another crack. Alright, so they all look different. And you can spend as much time as you want making these look different. But honestly, once they get printed, unless it's really obvious, you won't see it. Alright, so I'm going to duplicate. I'm going to keep my wall going. I'm going to move. And I'm going to move this one over here. I'm going to duplicate again. And now I'm going to rotate this one to bring it down. So what you can do is you can see this little green line. If you hit Shift and rotate till you get to 90 degrees, because I want a 90-degree rotate. Then you can let go of shift, and then you can just move it down and then line it up however you want it for your wall. I'll push it back. Yeah. So now our wall has went around a corner. And then you can click on another one, Alt, click, and then I'm going to duplicate and rotate this one to give it a different look. So if I duplicate it, and then I'm going to rotate it by hitting Shift, turning it around on the green wood. I'm going 180 this time because I want the other side to give it a different look. And then I'll let go of Shift, and I'm just going to move it up, put it where it should go. That side doesn't seem to have as much detail as the other one, so I think I'm going to change that. I'm going to go back to my standard brush because that's where I have my alpha sitting on. I'm going to go to light box, and I'm going to grab this one, light box, and then I'm going to drag it out. And I'm just moving it around so it looks like it matches a little bit better. I like this side. That side looks good. This one's a little busy, but you can always change it. Alright, so now I'm going to extend this wall out a little bit further on the corner. I'm just going to Alt click to select this one, and I'm going to hit move, and I'm just going to grab this arrow and slide it out. Oops, Control Z, I'll put it back where it was. I forgot to hit duplicate. Drag this out just so it's touching. And then I'm going to duplicate this one again. And if you hit Shift and drag down on your screen, it'll flatten everything out for you so you can tell where you're at. Shift and drag down. I think I'm going to rotate this one too. So I'm going to hit Shift 180. You can see the number, it was right down here. And I'm going to slide it back just so it touches. There we go. So now we have a ruined wall corner. And so what we need to do is we need to make the bottom of this flat so that we can print it. But before we do that, we have to combine all these separate elements into one. So to do that, we can go down to, we're under subtool, where all our subtools are, all these different bricks. We can go to merge and merge visible. If you look up here, these are the only subtools we have, subtool palettes we have. So if we go up here and we hit merge visible, suddenly we'll have a new one, which is this one. And that was all the ones we had before merged into one unit. So this is now its own subtool, moves together. If I went move, it would all move. Go back to draw. And then we can go to move. This little cog on the 3D gizmo, that's what this is called. And then we're going to go to flatten. What this allows you to do is to move these little pins to flatten sides of your model. So we want it to be flat for when it goes onto the printer. So just to make sure, we grab this bottom pin and we just kind of move it up, and you'll see it flatten out. I don't want to go too far because I want the rounded edges on the bottom a little bit. So I just want to go up a little bit. There we go. Make sure it's all flat. So that'll print nicely and it still looks like a wall. So we can click this little cog again, go back to our 3D gizmo, back to draw. And now we want to make sure there's no holes in this model, as in where these pieces connect. Like so when we print it, it'll be watertight. So we do that by going down to geometry, and we can just Dynamesh it again. And that basically closes all the holes and makes it, closes all the seams. It won't close these holes that we left intentionally, like that little, well, it might close that one, it's small. But if there were bigger holes, it wouldn't close a big hole. So we'll just hit Dynamesh. And now you see it sealed up these edges. If I zoom in, you can see that that's now a sealed edge. It left our little hole, which is okay. That'll still print, and it looks like a ruined wall. But I like them. I like these little gaps and stuff. They still print fine, and it makes it look more like a wall. Now, we lost some detail when we Dynameshed, and that's because we were at 128 resolution. So this goes back to controlling how many polygons you have and where they are. So if we Control Z, and we go back, well, Control Z. Alright, so you see how high the detail is here. When we hit Dynamesh, it kind of blurs it up a little bit. So we hit Control Z, and we can make our resolution higher. We'll go about 600, and then we hit Dynamesh. Wait for it to finish. This will go orange when it finishes. You can see up here it's working. Alright, so now you see the detail didn't really change when we Dynamesh. So if I hit Control Z, it'll go back to what it was before we Dynameshed. Control Z, it looks pretty much the same. And now if I hit Control Shift Z, it'll go back to where it was after we Dynameshed. Control Z, see that it came back on. It's just incremental changing, incremental steps of things that we've done is what Control Z and Control Shift Z do. So you can still see the detail. So we now have a finished wall that we can print on our printer, but the file is going to be enormous, because if you look down here, we have active polygons over 6 million. So to fix that, we use what we call Decimation Master. It's found in Z plugin, Decimation Master, and then we can pick one of these smaller sizes. So if you look at this, Shift F, you can see there's your 6 million polygons. How many polygons are you? They're absolutely tiny. So what Decimation Master does is it will keep all the polygons in these detailed cracks and then make larger ones in these more flat areas. So we'll have less polygons but be able to keep all our detail. So here it is before we use Decimation Master, and then we'll use Decimation Master and you'll see what it looks like afterwards. So we go to Z plugin, Decimation Master, and we'll do 250K. Okay, now you see how many polygons we have down. Active polygons is 500,000, which is much less. And you see the detailed cracks are much darker because they have a lot more polygons in them. And then you see these surfaces where there wasn't much going on, you have bigger polygons and less. So that's how Decimation Master keeps your detail but reduces your active polygons. So if I hit Shift F, you'll see we still have all our detail, but our file is going to be much smaller. We can even go more than this. We can reduce it even more by going to Z plugin, Decimation Master, and then we can go down to 150K. And now we see we have 300,000 active polygons, and we still have our detail. If we zoom in, you can see the polygons now. If we went any smaller, we would probably start losing some detail. You can start to see the actual triangles now. But if you're 3D printing this, that'll be fine. Alright, so now that we got our file a reasonable size, we just go to Export. And it's going to go to Z plugin, Decimation Master data by default. I never save it there. I'm going to save it into YouTube Export. And I already have one here because I did it earlier, but I'll do a new one. We'll do Ruined Wall Corner 2 OBJ. And we will save it. So now that's sitting on my hard drive, and I can drop that file into MeshMixer, and I can change the scale. I can fix any errors that might be there in the polygons automatically, and I can center the model on the stage for when I put it into other programs. And then when I'm done with that, I can put it into Cura, and I can slice it and put it on my printer and print it. So As you can see, once you learn the user interface, you can very quickly start making printable models for your table. Alright, so now we've created our file in Zbrush and it's sitting on our hard drive, and we are going to drop it into MeshMixer to scale it to the size we want for our tabletop. So here's our file, Ruined Wall Corner 2. So I'm just going to drag it over and drop it into MeshMixer. And there we go. See all these little red things? Those are little errors with the polygons, and it's pretty easy to fix in MeshMixer. So first we're going to change the size, edit, transform, and currently this is only 5 by or 6 by 3 by 4.5 millimeters, which is too small. So I want this to cover about half the body of a 28 millimeter figure. So I'll say these are each 5 mil high, 5, 10, 15. So we'll make it 15 mils high. So that would be, let's see what axis that is. That's the y-axis. Control Z to change what I just did. So I'm going to go to this y-axis, and I want it to do uniform scaling. I'm going to make the y-axis 15 millimeters. Accept. So it's much bigger now. We scroll out. So now we got to align it to bring it all back into view. Accept. And now if we go back to transform, we see that our x-axis is 33.5 millimeters. The z-axis is 26.2 millimeters, and then our height is 15 millimeters. So our character's head and shoulders will be sticking over the wall, so it gives them some good cover. Alright, so now we're going to fix all these little red errors. We'll accept that, size change and alignment, and then we'll go to analysis and we'll do inspector. So what this does is looks for any little things it deems improper for the model's geometry, and then you just do auto repair all. It should fix them all. Yep. So now if you look, it didn't really change the model. Look, it just repaired those small spots where it felt like the geometry should be adjusted slightly. So now we have our model. It's the size we want. We hit done. So now we got our wall the size we want it for our tabletop, and we can export it as an STL file. So we hit export, and I've already exported one, but it's the same to our YouTube export, and we're just gonna export it one more time, and I'll just put number 2 behind this one. Alright, and then we hit save it as a STL. We hit save. Now I have the STL sitting on my hard drive, and I can put that into Cura, slice it, and send it to my printer. Okay, so now we've sized our model to fit the scale of our table. We fixed any little errors that might be in the geometry, and now we're ready to put our STL into Ultimaker Cura, slice it up, and put it on the printer. So I'm just going to grab the file we made, drop it here into Cura, and then I'm going to flatten it out so it's going to print supportless because the way we made it. So we select that, rotate, select face to align, flat, just like that. So now it's ready. So I'm going to use my Anycubic Kobra, which I love, and I'm going to slice this up using standard settings. Alright, I sliced it up. I'm going to save it to my disk right here to our YouTube export folder. That's the G code. Alright, I've moved the file over to my printer. Ruined Cover Wall STL print. And after a little warm-up period, it's now printing. We'll have it in about 15 minutes. Alright, it's been 15 minutes and our little model is done. So here's a quick look at the model off the printer. And now we're going to paint it black. Now that the black is dried, I'm going to do a heavy overbrush of a medium gray. Next up is a lighter gray. I'm using country gray. I'm going to do a dry brush over it. Yep, you guessed it. Another gray, an even lighter one, granite gray. I'm going to do an even lighter dry brush. Alright, now I'm going to use some washes to add a little color. I'm going to start with some green on the bottom. Like there's stuff growing up on it. And then I'm going to switch to some Agrax. Not even going to clean my brush out. A little bit higher, like it's dirt. Maybe go into the green a little bit. Then I'm going to switch to some blue for the highest part. Drakenhof Nightshade. Go up here. Go some blue. A blue tint. There's a lot there. That's too much. Much here too. Right there. Now we got some variation in color to our stones. Now that that's dry, I'm going back to the granite gray and I'm just going to do a very light edge highlight. Now I'm going to put a little bit of glue where I want my flocking to stay. Use this little tiny toothpick. A little bit right there. A little bit right here. Basically in the little cracks. Put some right here too. Good. Now I just sprinkle my flocking on top. Now let that dry. Alright, it's been sitting for a minute. I'm going to shake it off. And for the final step, I'm going to put a little tuft of grass right here. Like that. And now that it's all done, you can see it fits in nicely with this grave brute and Mowgli, the monk turtle.